A word for our listeners. Masks of Nyarlathotep is set in the 1920s. We will be using terms and sayings from those times, including some that could be considered offensive. It is not our intention to offend. We merely wish to offer as accurate a view of the time period as possible. Welcome to the Nerds Domain presents Masks of Nyarlathotep. Join us each week as our investigators follow a path of clues and attempt to save the world from an ancient evil. Starring John Quiet, Justin Kimmett, Shirley Nedzwicki, George Chimples, Jason Hall, and Scott Troiano, with Matt Quiet running the table as keeper. Eldritch evils and crazed cultists await you just beyond this music.
Hi everybody, and welcome back to Nerds Domain presents Masks of Nyarlathotep. This week we are joined with four fantastic guests. The good friends of Jackson Elias, Scott Dorward, Paul Fricker, Matthew Sanderson, and Tiffany Sanderson. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
So one of you take kind of point and tell us about your podcast and how you guys got started.
Do you want to do that, Paul, as you arranged it?
Okay. Yeah, it was kind of around the time of the Kickstarter of 7th edition, I think. The three of us started working on some projects, and we kind of put our heads together and decided to start putting out a podcast. We were all very interested in Call of Cthulhu and related topics, and decided to make a show based around that.
Okay. And so you all three...
2 years
sorry,
ago.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's coming up towards 2 years, I think, now.
Yes.
Yeah. And you guys all three are experienced writers in not just RPGs, but specifically in Call of Cthulhu, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say so. And related, some of the related systems. Matt's written quite a lot for Trail of Cthulhu.
Yeah, I've done Trail of Cthulhu, Esoteric Sphere itself, so Gumshoe-related games, and off on a bit of a tangent for Vampire the Masquerade as well.
Okay, all right. And Scott, you've written quite a bit as well?
Yes, well, I'm the line developer for Cubicle 7 for World War Cthulhu. And yes, I've written for Trail of Cthulhu, Call of Cthulhu, Cthulhu Dark, and probably other games with Cthulhu in the name.
Okay. And Paul, you wrote the game that we ran at Gen Con last year, Gadsby and the Great Race, that we will be running again, and looking forward to this year. But you've also written several other supplements as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I worked on the 7th edition rules for Call of Cthulhu, and several other scenarios, such as Gatsby that you ran. That was the first one I put out. Dockside Dogs, and some other scenarios that have gone in various collections.
And Tiffany, you're the one that's in charge and keeps all the three of them on task, right? That's your...
I do try.
You are the social media kind of marketing end of what Blasphemous Tomes is, the official company.
Yes, I like to go out and socialize and go to the conventions and meet new people and bring them towards the authors.
Excellent. So I found you guys because at Gen Con last year I was looking at the 7th edition quick rules, not last year, 2013. The 7th edition quick start rules, and there was a little flyer hung right there at the Chaosium booth. And we had just gotten started on our Masks of Nyarlathotep, and Jackson Elias is the the starting character that gets killed.
You came across us because of that little flyer.
Yeah,
Oh, wow,
I saw it.
I put that up at the stand. I didn't think anybody noticed it at all.
Yeah, I saw it and I went, good friends of Jackson Elias. It might not be exactly about what we're playing, but it's going to be about Call of Cthulhu, right? And I took a picture of it, and a couple of weeks later, I subscribed to the podcast, and I haven't stopped listening. So
excellent.
Cool.
You're at least entertaining. Actually, I've gotten a lot of good information out of you guys. Hopefully one of our players will listen to this. You guys talked about body horror, and there was a point where I was looking for a way to freak out one of the players even more than he already had been. And I slid over into body horror, but did it as part of a dream sequence. A part of his chest turned gray and just kind of slid down the rest of his body in this trail of goo, and the player was sufficiently creeped out. And had it not been for your guys' podcast, I never would have gotten anywhere near that.
Oh, fantastic!
So
you have Scott to thank for that lovely imagery. He normally employs that.
Yeah, that sounds like one of Scott's.
Yeah, I do like my body horror.
yeah, which ironically I did it to our Scott. So he will. I'm sure if you come out to Gen Con this year, he'll thank you thoroughly. So you guys have all been gaming for a while. I know, Matthew, you're the newest to gaming as it is, but the Paul, you and Scott have been gaming for decades. Is that correct?
I think probably longer than Matt's been around.
Yeah, I certainly. Sorry, after you, Matt.
I was going to say there have been comments that Scott's old enough to be my father.
Yeah, but technically and actually legally that is true.
Just walk you down the aisle. He is Daddy Dorwood.
Yes, I did give Tiffany away at their wedding, which I think is just a testament to how old I look.
Oh.
Well, so Matthew, you started out in Vampire, where we kind of shared a lot, and I didn't realize it because I was part of the game at the time that you were. But you have moved on from there. So that's how long have you been gaming?
Yeah, pretty much coming up to 15 years this summer. I started gaming when a friend of mine introduced me to a local live action Vampire Masquerade game that was happening, and this was around the time of Revise / Third Ed, as a way to keep me sane while going nuts in my run up to my exams. And got bitten by the bug and haven't looked back since.
Okay, Paul, how did you get started into gaming?
Oh, this is making me feel really old. I was at school, I think it was about 1980, and a friend of mine suggested that we go along and play this game called Dungeons and Dragons, and we played it with some older guys that would have been 5 or 6 years older than us, so it was like we were in awe of them. Their games were totally amazing, and so we were probably about 13 and they were probably about 17. And that's how we got started, with a few photocopied rules of Call of Cthulhu. No, sorry, not Call of Cthulhu. Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And then kind of, been at it ever since, really, and gone through lots of different games and lots of different players.
Okay, and Scott, did you get started the same way in Dungeons & Dragons?
Yes, very similar story. I was at boarding school at the time, and one of the other kids there had a copy of D&D, suggested we give it a go, and I haven't really looked back since then. That's been, best part of 35 years.
Mm. Right on. Tiffany, how did you get started?
I actually started with Vampire Masquerade on IRC back in '93, about 13 years old. I traveled all over the country and moved all over the place, so it was the only way I could keep in touch with who I considered friends and keep a social life through the gaming. So it's been a huge part of my life. That's where I met Matthew through the cam, and that's how I met these guys. I don't think I could feel life without it, really.
Excellent. Okay, so let's get a little bit into Masks and your guys' Call of Cthulhu experience. Scott, you've run Call of Cthulhu, or run Masks. You all three have run Call of Cthulhu. But Scott, you've run Masks, and Paul and Matthew, you played in a game of Masks.
Yeah.
I don't know, one at a time, kind of give us your overall what you thought of the super module or whatever they call it.
I'll start. My memories of it aren't exactly crystal clear because I ran it, 30 odd years ago. But I've got a number of vivid memories, and my overall impression was that, it's a fantastic campaign. It's very varied. It's got lots of exciting moments in it. I also remember, I think my experience was somewhat different from Matt's and Paul's, not just in that, I GM'd it and they played it, but in that, at the time, I played very much kind of rules as written and showed no mercy. And as a result, the game was an absolute meat grinder. The investigators dropped like flies all the way through my campaign, and kind of the main creativity on the players' parts ended up involved coming up with new pretexts to bring new characters in. Just because they needed, at least a couple of new ones every session.
Excellent. How about you, Paul?
I played a little of it about, I don't know, in the 90s. I played the first couple of chapters, maybe, the first few chapters. But then our GM left the area, and I was kind of left always wanting to play the rest of it. And then recently in our local game, our GM offered to run it, so I kind of jumped on board with it. And I'd pretty much forgotten the details, so I just kind of went along with it. But I think the strength of it for me comes from some of the kind of iconic scenes in it, like all the Egyptian stuff and the New York scenes and the London setting and so on. There's such sort of strong, so many strong settings and so many sort of memorable scenes in it that kind of get set up for you to play through.
Excellent. Matthew, what about you? What were your impressions?
Very, very similar to Paul's in that sense, that it has a sense of scale, unlike pretty much any other game of Call of Cthulhu that we've played before then. We actually, when we played it through, Matt Knott, our keeper at the local Milton Keynes role-playing games club, ran us through Escape from Innsmouth beforehand. We changed around some of the dates to make it fit chronologically. But we used the same characters between the scenarios. Actually, me and Paul were the two characters that survived the raid, and then went on to go and meet up with our good friend Jackson Elias in New York. And it was just a vast scale in comparison, that instead of having the campaign set just in one small area of New England, it took you all over the world, had you fighting gods on multiple occasions, and it just seemed it doesn't really get much bigger than this.
Excellent. So when we went through it, to give you guys an idea, we had a total of 13 player characters. We lost technically we lost 4 to death, but one of them was his body was left behind beneath the pyramid in Egypt, and he may have been resurrected to become a future story piece in our upcoming Octung story, because he was part of British nobility. So he will be sufficiently insane and occultist by the time Octung comes around. But we went through several people, losing, I want to say 5 people just in Egypt alone. It was a little rough.
How many players did you have?
6.
Okay.
I had one player that did not go to a second character. He never had the chance to, and then he had to drop out as we went to the China chapter. We never touched the Australia chapter. It never seemed to make sense to any of them to go there.
Oh.
So we skipped that chapter altogether, and from everything I read, it seemed like that made some sense.
Certainly when I ran the original Masks back in the 80s, the Australia chapter didn't exist in it. That was something that was included with the complete Masks of Nyarlathotep some time later. And, certainly my group, didn't seem to miss the fact that, there was this chunk that, didn't appear until later.
Okay. Well, good. Well, I did it right then.
I don't remember our reason for going to Australia, but I do remember enjoying playing it.
I think by the time that we were done with China, it had just gone so long. We've been playing once a month for 18 months. So it really came down to, we could go on this last one. It's all the players felt like it was slightly convoluted for a reason to go there. So they just decided to skip it, and we wrapped up the game after they went to Grave Dragon Isle and didn't even go inside the volcano.
What?
So, yeah, they got on the island and did the ritual, sufficiently hiding, and then as they were leaving, got caught and swept out to sea. A couple of them swept out to sea, and then rowed for their lives back to the shore because their boat had the ship they had come on had been clearly taken over by deep ones or hybrids at least, and they fled like the Dickens. So, they didn't even get to see the rocket, which is unfortunate, and they didn't get to confront Pinhew, which that's unfortunate as well. But I have more things to work with now in the future. So, yay for me.
I was going to say that's one of the moments that stood out for me when we walked into that chamber at the end. Just my immediate reaction of thinking, I just walked into You Only Live Twice. What the hell? It feels like James Bond.
Yeah. I did find the adventure a lot more pulpy than I would expect from Cthulhu. There's a lot of combat, a lot.
Yeah.
And we made sure that we role played out every boat scene. So every time they got on a boat, we talked through at least one episode, if not multiple ones. We lost a character on a boat to deep ones. The skin of the people of the monolith was carved off of a book and tossed into the ocean on one of those boat rides because it was unnatural and it was freaking out the character. So that was fun.
At least you get to shoot shotguns off the back of the boat and improve your shotgun skill.
Oh yeah. They certainly approved of that because man.
So you get on a long sea voyage. There's two things you do. One is be armed with shotguns to fire off the bow, and the other is read books that drive you insane. What can go wrong with that?
Good combination.
That was the first boat ride, and then the second boat ride they went, we're going to Egypt. We should all learn Arabic. And one of the characters that actually had Arabic on his character sheet, so he taught 2 or 3 of them a little bit of Arabic, just enough to get them by.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun. How did your any of you 3 can answer if you remember, how did your London chapter go? Did you guys end up on side quests?
I remember London very well.
No, you don't, Matt. You just shut yourself in a hotel room. We put wet towels all around the door.
I told you I remembered it well.
We kind of avoided everything, I think.
Was that the second chapter for you guys? Did you go there right after New York?
Yeah.
We went New York, London, Cairo, Kenya, Australia, Shanghai.
Okay.
What happened? Scott, I think we encountered the sort of monsters in the mist, didn't we? And some deaths in the mist.
Yeah, there was a little sort of moment where we did do a side quest. We did 2 of the side quests. The first one we went to go and see the artist up in Finchley or somewhere in North London. And we ended up taking away one of his paintings as a method by which we could try new recruits whenever we had new members of the party join us. By, hey, if you can take the sand loss from looking at this painting, then you're good for this group. That bloody serpent person that nearly killed the whole party.
Wow.
And the other side quest that we started off as the group saying that's a red herring, we're not going to go anywhere near it, was the werewolf. But then we had one session where about half the group couldn't make it, and we didn't want to progress much further without them. So we decided, hey guys, let's take a trip up to Yorkshire and go battle a werewolf.
Right on. Okay. Yeah, they went to fight the werewolf. They skipped all the other side quests. There was no other side quest except this one, and mostly because I laid this one at their feet and told them to go do it. But it was a turning point character-wise for the party because one of them used the Withering spell to murder the werewolf, just destroy it in front of the father and the brother, and felt no remorse. And it was a moment where there could have been character death by other characters, and we narrowly avoided that. So it was an interesting one. So that's a side quest. That's totally worth it. I'm glad they skipped the painting, the artist one, only because you open the wrong door and you lose a character, and that felt really rough, really really rough to me.
Thankfully, we didn't have that particular encounter, but the serpent person was enough. Although our main tipping point from what I remember of that campaign is that adventure, we never went to the estate. We got attacked by the thing in the fog and then decided, that's it, it's too dangerous, get out. And we, as Paul says, put wet towels around the door frames, the windowsills, took watches sleeping to make sure this thing couldn't get in, and got the first boat to Cairo.
Ah. Wow. Scott, do you remember what happened in London for your group?
No, I really don't. On the other hand, I did actually get to play a small amount of Masks recently. I mean, I said I hadn't played it, but I have played 2 sessions. I played them last year via Skype. Keeper Murph of the Miskatonic University podcast was running it, and I joined him and his group for a few sessions. And it was the London session, or at least the aftermath of the London session that I joined, after they'd gone through and absolutely screwed everything up, just got half the party killed, the other half arrested, and so on, and they'd end up fleeing London and hiding in the country estate. And I was there mostly for the session where they just decided to go through the various artifacts that they'd managed to pick up, and were sitting in this basically groundskeeper's shack in the grounds of the estate, just trying these artifacts and spells to see what they do, and just driving themselves mad. And it was terrific. Yeah, it almost ended up as a TPK that session, just from the silly things they did with those artifacts.
Wow. We had a player playing an English character. And he made a point that when they stepped off the boat that he felt at home in the fog. And it was great to be back home in the fog. And the fog was wonderful. And I just kept going, wow, you're really playing this up. I'm glad that, you have no idea what's coming. And they all immediately went straight to the Penhew Foundation, demanded to talk to Edward Gavigan, who was, conveniently not there. After Edward Gavigan had sent cultists to attack them in New York City, mostly to rifle their rooms to find their stuff. And it had gone very poorly, and they couldn't get a hold of Gavigan. But one of the players went, "Oh, well, I'm going to go find their, their Carlisle expedition notes. I'm going to go to their storage unit for that by myself with just this messenger all alone." And I went, "Do you really want to go by yourself?" And he went, "Yep." And I went, "Oh, okay." So he got captured and taken out to the manor, so they had to go to the manor to rescue him. But shortly after he was captured, the other 5 were hurrying back to their hotel room to prepare for the assault, and the fog attacked them and freaked out that player again very much. I had a lot of fun picking on Scott, but he deserves it when you say things like, "I love the fog; it makes me feel at home." So
that is asking for it.
But we also had, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's house made a short cameo appearance. So that was fun. Mm-hmm. And, we did a couple other things in London that weren't terrible, but nobody died in London. Even during the assault on the Miser house. Everybody seemed to get out all right, and then they all fled to Cairo very quickly.
Yeah. I remember the first time I played it, we went to Cairo on a wing and a prayer. We had one tenuous link to that guy's shop. Mm-hmm. And then when we get there, the shop has been burnt down and it's not there. We're like, what the hell?
Yeah. They were very, very frustrated with that, and then they were very, very paranoid that everyone was out to get them, which was very fair. Very fair.
That's not really paranoid when it's actually true, though.
Yeah. Do you guys remember going into the pyramid, into the Black Pharaoh's throne room?
Yeah.
Oh yes.
How many characters did you lose there?
Did we lose any there, Matt? I can't.
I think we had 2 that were driven permanently insane. Me being one of them.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We actually had we lost 2 guys there because the new guy that they had picked up when they got to Cairo, because one of them died on a boat, he sat down in the throne and was the only one unaffected at all. He failed his sanity check and then only lost 2. out of the D100.
Yeah,
Which,
that's great when that
yeah.
happens. We had that the first time I played it. Some guy sat in it and basically was pretty much unaffected by it, which is an awesome thing when you have that 1D100 SAN loss and then you lose like one.
And then Shirley, our only female player, lost like 85. She had thoroughly avoided reading books and like had looked away and just shot things and hoped that she hit, and was very unfortunately affected in that room. Do you guys remember anything else at Cairo that really stood out for you?
Cats! Bloody cats!
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The house of Omar Shakti was interesting. Anything, Scott? Do you remember much of Cairo at all?
I'd like to say yes, but no. It's a lot of brain cells under the bridge, I'm afraid.
No, that's understandable. The cat, they captured Shakti and actually held him at gunpoint and drove away with him. Which didn't do them any good because then when they killed him, he just turned into sand. But, the cat freaked them all out enough that when I guess they did go on a second side quest. They ended up on a side quest in Shanghai to the fortune teller. Did you guys go on that one?
I don't remember that one.
So there's a demon cat outside of the house trying to get into the fortune teller's house to kill him. And they all freaked out and shot the cat before they could even get in the door. Which fortunately saved them all, but like it was really ridiculous that there are two demon cats in this one giant module. And they made the assumption that in all of Call of Cthulhu, cats are evil, and you can't trust anyone that's an importer-exporter at all. Not ever.
Yeah, that does seem to be true. Yeah.
Well, I mean, cats are evil even outside Call of Cthulhu, so yeah, no argument there.
And so you guys went to Kenya. Kenya is, I feel like Cairo is dangerous, but Kenya is kind of the first big, big reveal and big, dangerous climb up a mountain kind of thing. Did you guys get all the way to the Mountain of the Black Wind?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Survived
and that was really up against the odds there. Sorry, go on, Matt.
I was going to say, we survived the fire vampire on the train, which was bad enough. The hunting horror on the way to the mountain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have a hunting horror, but we had two fire vampires, one on the train and then one in the middle of town, when they went to go to the newspaper.
Mm.
And then how did you lose characters in the Mountain of the Black Wind?
I don't think we did. We kind of copped out by, I think we had the whistles that could summon up night ghouls.
We recovered your character, Matt. Didn't we recover your character that had been taken captive in? Am I getting this wrong? Your character was driven insane under the pyramid. Sorry, I keep talking over you. I'll stop. You say.
We keep starting at the same time. But he ended up getting his throat cut under the pyramid in Cairo.
Hmm.
Excellent. That mountain was not very kind. They got all the way to the top without really killing anybody and into the birthing room. So we did a montage where there was more character death than they were expecting. And the child of Nyarlathotep ripped apart one, or I'm sorry, not the child, what's her name? The girl that was carrying the baby. Yeah, Hypatia ripped apart one of the characters and murdered him right there in front of everybody, and they were just like, "Oh, okay, well, we'll move on." And they fled for their lives. So it was interesting. And then onto, you guys went to Australia, so tell us all about that, because none of our listeners have heard anything about it. We talked briefly about it during one of our wrap-up sessions. How was your experience in Australia?
I'll wait for Paul to start this one.
Well, like I said earlier, I don't remember our reason for going to Australia. I remember ending up in some caverns and with the formless spawn just floating through the air towards us, and being driven insane and getting a phobia about teeth. And then there was a lot of emergency dentistry that went on. What else do you remember, Matt?
It was a flying polyp, not a formless spawn.
Oh, of course, yes.
I remember that we'd gone there because we had I can't remember where we picked it up, but we had a connection. So one of the missing members of the Carlisle expedition was off at a dig in the Australian outback. We ended up going out there, found the dig, found it was deserted, and ended up going into the kind of Australian Dreamtime, where these weird elongated figures took us into this weird kind of crystal cavern that was in between the waking world, the dreamlands, and wherever. And using that as a bridge by which we stepped into the city of the Great Race. And then had a very long walk around the tunnels in the city. That's where we encountered the flying polyp. And eventually a Yithian that had been taken out of time with a very, very long and only, I think his name was made up of K's, Z's and X's. I think from memory, it was like some very, very, almost like 2 inches long when you looked at the printout of the name. And that he'd been used to perform some weird time experiment. It was very, very different from the other chapters. I can understand why it was taken out originally, in that it's a very different tone to the rest of them. Yeah. So not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just very different.
Yeah, did you guys get to play with the lightning guns and fire at those at the flying polyps?
Oh, that's you find those in the house that they built, like their storage hut, haven't they, in one of the chambers? Yeah. I remember trying. I don't remember succeeding.
Fair enough. So, and then you guys ended up in Shanghai. You guys went all the way into Grey Dragon Island and actually dealt with Pinhu. Did anyone survive at the end?
Yeah, we'd got the spell, hadn't we? The what's it called? The Eye of Light and Darkness. Yeah. So we were preparing that on the boat across the island, if I recall correctly. And we got the am I right?
Yeah, I think we cast it on I think either on the boat or most of it on the way there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So once we got there, as I recall, it seemed to go reasonably smoothly for us.
Mm-hmm. Well, having Tommy guns and unloading them into a dimensional shambler was pretty good.
Scott, do you have any memories of either the Kenya chapter or the Shanghai chapter?
Kenya, I don't remember too well. I mean, I remember it being a bloodbath, but I don't remember. I don't remember the details of it, apart from, again, lots of characters dying. I do remember Shanghai very specifically. Apologies, because I did mention this on the Good Friends of Jackson and Elias as well, but I'll repeat myself a little bit here. There was one of the players who had come up with a cunning wheeze for actually surviving Call of Cthulhu. He played lots of RuneQuest before, and he'd realised that the secret to survival in combat was armor. So he played this Japanese historian character who was obsessed with the samurai period, and had a suit of samurai armor and a katana, and would just wander around in these things, kind of wading into combat. And he did this in Shanghai as well. I mean, his character survived almost all the way through. His character did this in Shanghai until he decides to challenge a Shoggoth to a duel. And that did not end well. I think the words spam in a can were used.
Nice. Wow. Okay. And like you said, you guys all thoroughly enjoyed running and playing. Is it something you would take up again? Is it something Scott, or I'm sorry, Paul or Matt, would you want to run this?
I can see myself possibly running it in a forthcoming years. Yeah, if I were to sort of, if I had a group that hadn't played it, then yeah, I might. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise. The thing for me is if I ran it, I'd run it with Pulp Cthulhu rules rather than standard Cthulhu.
Mm. Yes. Yeah, so we've all been in the position of running Pulp Cthulhu campaigns over the last year. It's not actually out yet, but we've been developing some stuff for Pulp Cthulhu. So having seen the rules in action, I think Pulp Cthulhu as a set of mechanics is so much better suited for running masks than ordinary Call of Cthulhu. In that, you could probably have a starting group of characters in New York who would, the vast majority of them, if not all of them, would make it through to the end of the campaign. They spend a lot of time on the ropes. They spend a lot of time insane. They'd have lots of very daring escapes from death, but you'd have that degree of continuity. And Pulp Cthulhu was terrific for that.
Okay. From any of the three of you, is there any advice specifically for the Masks of Nyarlathotep story that you would give to players or to a keeper that's going to run it?
Well, one bit of advice. Well, I don't know about advice. It's more of a general thing rather than anything specific. But I remember, I was a very kind of fledgling keeper when I ran Masks, and I ran it very differently then from the way I would have run it now. And I remember one of the things that stuck with me about it was that, there were. It was a campaign that's got lots and lots of cool handouts for the players. I mean, you're absolutely spoiled with handouts. And a lot of them convey interesting information and so on. But my memory is that, a lot of them didn't end up getting into the players' hands because, I was being very strict about, you get to, area such and such, and you make a spot hidden or a library use roll to find this, and if you don't get it. And, I ended up feeling like I'd sort of cheated the players a lot by denying them some of these handouts. And I think these days, if I were running it, I'd be much more generous with that. I'd perhaps ignore some of the roles that it was based on, and if there was a bit of information that I think, not just that it would be crucial for the players to have, but it would be fun and it would enhance the experience of the game, then I'd be much more generous in just saying, oh yeah, and by the way, you find this handout.
Okay. Paul, Matthew, any advice on the player end?
Well, go ahead, Paul.
Okay. if I could just try and summarize what a friend of ours, Steve Ellis, said about running the game. He actually gave the players rewards, kind of like luck points or whatever, rewards for creating flashback scenes relating to Jackson Elias. So if they were sort of coming up against a particularly difficult area or something they were finding challenging in the game, they could say, oh, wait a minute, I remember the time I was with Jackson Elias. And then they'd have tell a little flashback story of how they actually did know they were with maybe Jackson when he hotwired a car one time and he showed them how to do it. So, they get a bonus on their roll to hotwire a car.
Okay.
Which gives the players kind of more license to do things that maybe they, it wouldn't be logical for them to be able to do otherwise. But B, it keeps them motivated and keeps Jackson Elias, which is the whole kind of springboard for their campaign. It keeps that to the forefront of the story, which I thought was a really clever idea.
Matthew, any thoughts?
Yeah, just as the warning to players, don't get attached to your character, really. Don't come up with an elaborate backstory. Don't worry too much of the fine details. We had one guy spend half an hour doing that in a session and then died after his first roll. So really does.
Oh wow.
Yeah. He tried to mop up the Shoggoth. It was coming under the door. He mopped it up thinking it was a pool of water and was given a new character sheet. So yeah, be aware that this is a meat grinder. You are potentially going to lose character. So if you're the type of player that gets a little bit frustrated or, but my precious has died. Yeah, this isn't the campaign for you.
And make sure you have a spare pair of eyes.
Oh yes.
My character's not dead. His eyes just melted.
I always carry a couple of human eyeballs in my pocket, so I'll be fine.
We had players send journals. We had one character come in as a priest because he took confession from from his previous character to explain the entire thing in Cairo.
Yeah.
We had some interesting ways to bring people in. They were a lot of fun. Tiffany, I'm going to let you talk now. If you're still there, right?
Yeah, I'm still here.
You didn't wander off into the dreamland or anything.
No, I didn't.
Tiffany, what do you think as far as players joining a Call of Cthulhu game that have never played before? Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, don't give up. Just keep trying different games because every single one of them has been different. And I never really got along with Trail, but I found out I really, really enjoy Pulp quite a lot. So my really advice is,
Are you there?
I'm here, but
apparently the shock theta.
Uh-oh. Well, I think we lost Matthew and Tiffany.
Yeah, Matthew's internet connection is dubious.
Yeah. It happens. It does happen.
Yeah, it does.
And we are calling across the giant ocean, so, that happens as well. We'll come back to Tiffany when they reconnect, hopefully. But Scott, Paul, are there any adventures or stories that you guys would point people towards that you think are really good, other than Gatsby? Because I will talk about how great Gatsby and Great Race is all the time. We had 33 players, and 33 players said that was fantastic. So,
that's marvelous.
Yeah, that was
a great job running it.
Mostly the writing, I'm pretty sure. So, any other modules or supplements or anything else that you would suggest?
Yeah, I would recommend, if I would pick one, the one that I've probably enjoyed running and playing the most, it's probably Realm of Shadows. It was published by Pagan Publishing. It's a campaign that starts in New England, and it's not really world spanning, but it does. The second part does travel to a different continent. It's a great kind of game that starts off with the small town intriguing mystery, and then develops into something much bigger.
Okay.
So I thoroughly recommend that.
Scott, anything you would suggest?
This is where I make the embarrassing confession that I've actually, in the last 30-odd years, I've played and run very few Call of Cthulhu scenarios or campaigns that one of the three of us haven't written. But I think the only two I've played in recent years have been Walker in the Wastes, which was a lot of fun, which Paul ran, another Pagan Publishing campaign, and Beyond the Mountains of Madness, which I think is, it's a very rich campaign in terms of background, but I'd hesitate about recommending it, just because I found it a bit railroady.
Okay. Well, it looks I tried to add Mad Them back, and it doesn't seem to be working. So, I don't know. What kind of you guys do a lot of conventions in England? It looks like England has conventions like every month.
Yeah.
That seem about right?
Yes, yeah, we have a lot here, and yeah, there's there are varying sizes. I mean, some of them are just little one-day things. Our local convention in Milton Keynes, Concrete Cow, is just a one-day event twice a year. But we have a wide range, like you say, pretty well every month throughout the year.
Okay. Do you guys travel out besides Gen Con anywhere that our listeners could find you?
Well, we've both at various stages been to conventions in Germany. We went to oh gosh, what was it called, Paul? Help me here.
Tentacles.
Tentacles, yes, of course, which is now being replaced by Eternal Con or the Kraken. But yes, yeah, I mean the German conventions are really good. I think it's the Kraken still takes place at the same location, doesn't it, Paul?
No, Eternal Con's the same location at Castle Stalak or whatever it's called.
Yeah, Castle Stalak, which is this old castle overlooking the Rhine on a hillside, and it's an.
They have conventions there.
Yeah, because the castle's been converted into a youth hostel. So it's this kind of bizarre combination of this wonderful old stone structure and these really kind of crappy old bunk beds to sleep on. It's great because you get to play with a lot of people from across mainland Europe who you wouldn't otherwise meet, and it's just a great location.
Excellent. Paul, you said something about Gadsby, and you guys played in a tower. Was that also a castle tower?
Yeah, that was at the German convention. Yeah.
Wow. So.
Yeah,
okay.
that was a lot of fun. It was a good location for it.
Wasn't that the one where you instructed the player to walk around the tower?
Well, that was actually a different game.
Okay.
That was the supermarket one, kind of based on the Mist, but it was a kind of like a LARP, and it was a small tower in the courtyard of the castle, and to simulate death, because it was a LARP, people could die and then sort of be out of the game for a little while, and then come back in and play a different character. So to have them be out of the game a little while, I said, I told this girl, okay, you go out and just walk around the tower, which should have taken like 3 or 4 minutes. And she'd gone a long time. And then about an hour later, she turned up and was saying, oh, it was a very long way, and there were brambles and thorns and bushes. She'd walked not round this little tower, she'd walked all the way around the castle, which I don't think any other member of the convention had ever done before, especially in the pitch dark. I mean, there were cliffs.
I was about to say, there was a huge, hundreds of feet drop down onto the Rhine.
Yeah. I think we got very lightly with that.
Wow. You guys have much better convention halls than we do. I love Indianapolis and its convention space, but Pilling and Castle sounds way better.
Because quite a few of the UK conventions are set in a UK convention might just have a couple of hundred people or less, 50 to 200 or 300 people. Often they're in more interesting venues. Like the barracks, the one in Sheffield, the one in Sheffield, Furnace. It takes place in an old jail, an old medieval jail that's been converted into a hotel, and it's great.
Wow. Tiffany and Matthew, you're back. Tiffany, would you like to kind of give us your advice again? I think we got cut off.
Yeah, a delightful laptop decided to restart halfway through the conversation.
Well, I was just saying, I agree. You don't get attached to any characters in this game. I just like to explore the different kinds of Cthulhu there are. There's, the pulp and the trail and the regular edition coming out. They're all so different. I think my advice really is just to keep trying them all, because every single one of them is different. It seems to suit taste for everybody.
Have any of the three of you played Cthulhu Tech yet?
No, I must admit, from the little bits I've read about it, it didn't, it is, the kind of science fiction giant robots aspect of it didn't particularly appeal to me. So I must admit I haven't tried that yet.
Okay.
No, me neither. I'm not a fan of anime in any way, shape or form, so that pretty much struck me as, this is an anime game with Cthulhu bolted onto it. This isn't no interest to me whatsoever.
Have you played that? No, I haven't, no.
No, I haven't, but the folks that made that made another game that I was leading up to called The Void, which is Call of Cthulhu in space. There's a planet or an asteroid of some sort that is some sort of Cthulhu-type thing coming towards Earth, and as it comes, things get weirder, and you play space investigators. The system was pretty streamlined. I liked it quite a bit, and I couldn't tell you the publisher off the top of my head if I had to, a gun held to my head, but it is another version, like Tiffany was saying. Cthulhu is a horror genre, but there are other genres you can play it within.
Oh yeah, I love the Atlantic City board game that we recently learned how to play is a really good Cthulhu game for me.
How do you guys like that? Because I saw it and then haven't done anything with it. Haven't gotten a chance to play it or anything.
Oh, yeah, the Doom that came to Atlantic City is a good fun. It's definitely as it says on the box, a very light-hearted take on Cthulhu. But yeah, it's good fun. You get to wander around the city, stomping on buildings. It's like reverse Monopoly. You don't buy the buildings, you blow them up.
Excellent.
It was kind of fun. I mean, it was more structure to it than Monopoly, really. I think it was, yeah.
Well, that's no bad thing.
Is there any inspiration you guys would suggest specifically for players or keepers for Call of Cthulhu? I think you guys have a couple of ideas there, but if you want to narrow it down a little bit, that'd be fine too.
You mean in general?
Yeah, movies, books, anything.
I see, right.
I mean, this is, I guess what I'm saying is take your podcast and sum it up into 5 or 10 sentences.
Well, I mean, it's probably an obvious thing, but the main inspiration I think we all go back to is Lovecraft himself, and it's one thing we've tried doing in our discussions on the podcast is we've talked about some specific Lovecraft stories, but we've talked about particularly how to strip mine them for gaming type stuff and take gaming approaches that other people may not have so far. The other, certainly literary recommendation that I'd make, again, not an earth-shatteringly unusual one, but just one that I don't see used enough for my tastes, is Arthur Machen. I'm a huge Machen fan, and he was a contemporary of Lovecraft. Some of his stuff influenced Lovecraft a lot. I mean, his story, The Great God Pan, was obviously a huge influence on, the Dunwich Horror. And Machen for me, is still to this day, one of the most exquisite writers of weird and horrific fiction.
Okay. Scott, or no, that was Scott. Paul?
Well, we were discussing an upcoming show idea of ours just recently, and I got on to thinking about that and about Call of Cthulhu and its popularity as a game. I think that you can take inspiration from wherever you want, really, and just because Call of Cthulhu, because if you think about games like games that have got a very specific setting, so Traveller, D&D, they haven't got specific settings, but they're very kind of genre-based things. So if you go and play Glorantha or something like that, you need to know about the setting. With Cthulhu, it's very much, there is a Call of Cthulhu mythos thing going on, but as a player, it's almost better that you don't know anything about that. And as a GM, you can really put any horror story you want in there. So you can draw on whatever you want. And if you're running it for your group or even writing it for publication, it doesn't have to tie into Lovecraft. It doesn't have to tie into the mythos. It can be any kind of horror type game. And quite a few of the scenarios that I've developed, I've started off with an idea, and then it's kind of occurred to me, oh, hold on, there's no mythos in here. I know, I'll twist that bit so it's a night gauntlet or something, just to kind of give it a more Lovecraftian feel, perhaps. But I think you can, you look at movies, look at whatever stories, books, whatever you like, and just twist it to be a scenario, and Call of Cthulhu should be able to accommodate it.
Well, I mean, you've proved that very well, Paul. With one of your most successful scenarios, takes strong inspiration from Reservoir Dogs, which seems like a very unusual source of influence for a Cthulhu scenario.
I guess so.
There's a lot of influences around where you live too. I look into the mythology and the horror that's surrounding you in ruins and artifacts, and museums around you use that as inspiration. I spent a lot of time with Matthew doing his research, and I can tell you some of the future projects that we're planning on collaborating on involve things that we found on our honeymoon. Just places, people, events, things that would inspire a mythos to hatch out of it.
It sounds like a terrifying honeymoon. That sounds great.
It was wonderful.
Matthew, any specific things you would suggest?
Yeah, I think if I was approached by someone to say how would you sum up Call of Cthulhu as someone that hadn't really come to it, I would be going from one of the most accessible and kind of easiest to digest and the quickest to experience route, which would be film. And I'd point them at probably 2 films in particular. Probably going to get a cringe from the other guys here, but I'd suggest John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness would be one, and the other one being Roman Polanski's The Ninth Gate. But they both tackle elements of the Cthulhu genre without really being Cthulhu stamped on it. But that kind of style and mood and menace in a game is what I try to convey anyway when I run games.
Okay. I think that'll kind of end our discussion, but why don't Paul, since you're in charge here, why don't you kind of point us towards the website and where we can find your podcast?
Okay, well, you can find us at blasphemoustomes.com. You can find our podcast, The Good Friends of Jackson Elias, at that website, and also via iTunes. We also have a Facebook account and a Twitter account and the G Plus account, all under the various names. If you search for us under The Good Friends of Jackson Elias, you'll find links to all of those.
Excellent. Anything else you guys want to touch on before we go?
Just to say thank you very much for having us on.
Oh no, it's our pleasure completely. And Matthew, I know you and Tiffany will be out at Gen Con, is that correct?
I will be. Tiff has decided to stay back mainly because of the cost implication of having to buy 2 tickets of crossing the Atlantic, and also then gives us a bit more money to play around with for her birthday, which is a couple of days after I get back.
Okay.
I guess we might be writing a scenario about, actually.
So you can turn anything into a Call of Cthulhu scenario. That sounds great. Paul, you said you were planning to come over.
Yeah, I'll be there. Yeah.
Okay. And Scott, will you be there as well?
Sadly, I don't think I'll be able to make it.
Okay. But we will see you guys. We will be able to see you guys there. If you guys really want to meet, at least Matthew and Paul, when registration goes up, we're going to try and have them in one or both of our games that we're running at Gen Con. We'll be running Gatsby and the Great Race again, and then we will also be running our own written adventure that is yet to be titled, although I need to title it so I can submit it. That will also involve multiple tables and an involved story between them. So,
oh, cool.
So your Facebook and your Twitter are at the Good Friends, or at Good Friends of JE.
Yeah, at Good Friends of JE, and Facebook is the Good Friends of Jackson Elias.
Excellent. And you can find us on Facebook and Twitter. You can go over to our website and sign up for our newsletter. You can go over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. You can find us on patreon.com at patreon.com/nerdsdomain, and you can buy our shirts over at /loot, and we will talk to you guys real soon.